This is TWiT.
On one hand, AI is touted as the answer to so many barriers in tech, and on the other hand, it's hard to predict where it might go if left unchecked. Anyone who remembers Microsoft's Tay AI experiment back in 2016 will recall just how biased and, air quotes, bad AI can get and how quickly it can happen. A new art project called ImageNet Roulette seems to walk on similar ground as the Tay chatbot, but intentionally so by comparison. And joining us to talk about it is Cade Metz, who wrote an article for the New York Times on the art project. Welcome, Cade.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. Really appreciate your time. So first of all, what is ImageNet Roulette? Why was it created to begin with?
It is, as you said, an art project. This is specifically designed to call attention to this problem of bias in AI and get people talking about it. And it had the desired effect. It's a pretty simple tool built by an American artist named Trevor Paglen, who you may know from various exhibits involving AI and particularly data privacy. In this case, he was working in tandem with a Microsoft researcher named Kate Crawford, who also runs an organization called AI Now, which explores bias and other issues in AI. Basically, they built a system that allowed you to upload your own photo, your own selfie, and it would make a judgment. It would analyze your face and assign you a label. And this took off last week on Twitter as kind of a curiosity. Like, it would label some people as an orphan or a non-smoker or a wonk or a dweeb or the like. I led my story with a man named Tabong Kima, who saw this going on Twitter, and he logged on and uploaded his photo, and it labeled him, and he's an African-American, as a wrongdoer and an offender. And he didn't think it was too funny. And as it turns out, unbeknownst to him, that was the desired effect of this project. It wanted to kind of show people how these biases can turn up. It was specifically designed to do that. Let's keep in mind, this is an art project. It wasn't accidental. But it did have that effect, and it did stir a lot of controversy and a lot of discussion, at least, on Twitter.
And it's operating on top of a data set that is not necessarily unique to this project, right? This is a data set that can be used in other projects. Like, how are things like loser and wrongdoer, how are those defined within a data set like this?
Right. Part of what they wanted to do is they wanted to apply this to a real data set that has been used to train AI in the past. It's called ImageNet Roulette because they focused on a data set called ImageNet. And in the AI world, at least, this is a famous data set. The reason we have systems that can effectively recognize faces and other objects in photos now is because of a technique called deep learning. It's a mathematical technique. And typically, ImageNet is attributed with really sparking the rise of this technique. ImageNet gathered a bunch of photos, millions of photos from across the internet, including faces, and it gave scientists the ability to train these deep learning systems to the point where this was about 2012. And so this gets talked about a lot in the AI world, that this particular set of images sparked the deep learning or the AI revolution, as you might call it. What was less discussed is that this data set contained a lot of faces, and that these faces were sorted into these various categories, the labels that ImageNet Roulette was applying, like wrongdoer, like non-smoker, like orphan. Essentially, the Stanford University scientists who created ImageNet gathered all these photos, and then they pulled in what you might call a digital dictionary, a hierarchy of terms of labels like this. This is all done on a massive scale. You sort of put it all into the same digital collection, and then you have humans, people on Amazon Mechanical Turk, who would actually apply these labels to the images. And those are the labels that this project is turning up. So they wanted to show that kind of the substrate that's used to train AI and has been used to train AI over many years has these biases kind of baked in.
And so the idea would be that if others are using this data set as well, like those similar biases are going to matriculate into their own projects, correct? Or is this project just really good at illustrating exactly how that's happening? Usually it's behind the scenes and we don't even see it happening. We just see the end result. We aren't privy to how it got there.
Exactly. This is an art project. It's trying to shine a light on the problem, but others have taken a more systematic approach and shown that this is a very real issue. That you have these systems that have been trained in ways that do show extreme bias. A lot of the face recognition systems which are out there are biased against women, biased against people of color. And so what this art project is trying to do is really show people that this problem is real and has gone on for a while. So it's a little bit of both there. This again, I can't stress this enough. This is an art project. They are using real data, but they're trying to stir people up. But if you sweep that aside, they are shining a light on a very real issue that goes on not just in one data set, but many data sets, which have been passed around over the years and used to train these models, as you said, in ways we don't necessarily understand. It's hard to view, behind the curtain, so to speak, because this happens on such an enormous scale. We as humans can't understand the volume of data that goes into this. Only machines can analyze it on this scale. So this is a way of showing people this is a problem, and then maybe get people talking about the ways to fix it.
Yeah, and one way that I know from my understanding of these data sets and how AI works in tandem with them is applying some sort of a confidence setting, like if 85%, 95%, whatever it is. I think Amazon, there was something with face scanning and the confidence setting that was in the news about 6 months ago. Any idea, like, is that basically how they're able to do this here? They're like eliminating that confidence setting, so it's kind of like it gets the worst reaction that it possibly could, so that it makes sure to illustrate this, and other applications and projects might have that confidence setting higher, and you actually wouldn't see this as much.
Well, I mean, that confidence setting, as you call it, is really something that is baked into this method, right? Fundamentally, this deep learning method gives you that kind of confidence score. Okay. It's all about how you use that. But the problem is deeper than that, right? And the problem with Amazon was deeper than that. It's a lot about which photos you're using to train your data. Do you have a representative sample that represents people of all colors, various genders? How are the people who are labeling the data? And this is a fundamental part of the way this works. The machine learns by analyzing the data, but first humans, like those humans using Mechanical Turk in the ImageNet example, have to label each image. They have to say, this is a face. This is a particular type of face. You have to think about these things as you're training the system. Otherwise, these biases can come out in ways you don't expect because the machine is analyzing the data on such a large scale, again, that you can't necessarily wrap your head around.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, unrelated to this story, but related in the sense that you're working on a book on the project. You have a book in the works on AI visionaries. Anything you can share about that project at this time?
Yeah, I mean, it's a narrative book about a small group of people who believed in this one idea, this deep learning idea, which is a very old idea. It dates back to the 1950s. And over the decades, there was a lot of promise around this idea, and then a lot of pessimism over it. The hype would sort of ebb and flow. And there's a small group of people who really believed in this over the decades. And then it started to work around 2010, 2012. And now most of these people work for the biggest companies on earth. They work for Google, they work for Facebook, Microsoft, and others. And so my idea is to build a narrative, intimate story about this group of people. And then you can layer the bigger ideas, some of which we've been talking about here, on top of that. How this one idea is changing so many different technologies. It's not just image recognition; it's speech recognition, machine translation. This same method plays into driverless cars. I could go on, but the best stories are always told through people. So I'm trying to tell this one through the people.
Right on. Sounds very interesting. We'll definitely I'll definitely be keeping my eyes posted for that. Cade Metz, writing for the New York Times. Where do you want people to follow you online if they want to follow your work specifically?
At the New York Times site, I'm on staff there, or on Twitter at Cade Metz.
At Cade Metz. Thank you so much, Cade. Appreciate your time today.
Appreciate it.
We'll talk to you soon.